In from mobile data.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the third and final event in the Thought Leadership series of Inclusion of Persons with Disability at the Workplace. My name is Smita, and I represent Inclusion Consulting Private Limited. Interweave Consulting Private Limited. Interweave is an inclusion consulting company focused exclusively on building and creating inclusive, safe, and equitable workplaces. In the event today, we bring to you case studies from three organizations. These organizations are large organizations and have been on the disability inclusion journey for some time now. The speakers from these organizations will talk to you about what it has taken them to be where they are today with respect to the readiness, preparation, the challenges that they face, the insights and learnings from their journey. To talk about this, we have S.V. Venkatraman, or Venki as he is most commonly known as. Venki is the MD of Bangalore Service Center for ANZ Banking Group. Venki is a long-time banker and has held leadership roles at several large organizations. To name a few, it's Aditya Birla Minax and Pero Systems. Welcome, Venki. Happy to have you as a part of this discussion. Our next
Thank you very
speaker
much. My
is
pleasure.
Shreya Oberoi Ghosh. Shreya is the DNI lead for Capgemini. In her role at Capgemini, she's focused on creating an inclusive culture across all business units and with a targeted effort to increase diversity representation at the leadership level. Prior to her stint at Capgemini, Shreya has held leadership roles at Sodexo as well as JSW. She's also a certified DNI expert from Cornell University. And our third speaker today is Vishaka Datta. She leads DEI for Publicis Sapient. Vishaka is passionate about creating community support groups and large networks that supports women, single parent, mothers, and LGBTQI community. And as I personally know, she's a strong ally for the LGBTQ community and supports advocacy for the community at the workplace. Welcome, Vishaka. Welcome, Shreya. And I can't thank you enough, Vishaka, for the Super Moms of India group that you've created, which really helped me while I was grappling with motherhood a few years ago. So thanks again. Happy to have all of you on this discussion today. So before we move on to the discussion, few pointers for our participants. There is a CC option or closed caption option available on all three platforms, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Please use as needed. For any further queries on the session, feedback for us, please write to us at mira@interweave.in. It's Mira at interweave.in. Also, to know more about our solutions and the work that we do at Interweave, please you can write to us at mira@interweave.in, or you can also visit our website, which is www.interweave.in. The recording of the session will be available immediately. We will share the link at our social media handle. In case there is an interest to know more about our events and programs in the future, please fill the Google form, the link for which is available in the comment box. And finally, let's keep that comment box engaging with a lot of questions from your end. We will be happy to respond to as many as possible in the time available. With that, I hand it over to our first speaker, Vishaka Datta. Over to you, Vishaka.
Thank you so much, Smita, and really appreciate this effort. This is a long-standing effort from Interweave. It's also giving the focus on this very important topic, and I'm hoping that by staggering and having different speakers, the audiences are learning, and we will have a lot of many workplaces and spaces which are accessible and enabling people with disabilities. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You're welcome, Vishaka. So, Mitch, do you want to put up the slide?
So frankly, when I was, being briefed for this particular effort, the piece that I really wanted to bring forward is the story of how us at Publicis Sapient looked at the journey, spoke to many people, got a lot of inputs, and how we went about our journey of inclusion for people with disabilities. Before that, just wanted to get a little more about the organization so you understand. The next slide, please. So we are a digital transformation partner. We are a modern, established organization. We help our clients become digitally enabled to serve better and thrive in their future, whatever it is that they may want to do. The next slide. And it is in our DNA that we are built to fix and solutionize in a digital way, enable organization to dream beyond what they thought was possible and not fit in. And that weaves in very beautifully with our philosophy of how we approach diversity, equity, and inclusion for our workplace as well. The next slide. Just a quick snapshot. We are a 20,000 passionate people organization. We have 50 plus offices globally that are connected. We are a part of the, a Publicis group, and, along with Publicis communications, media, and health, and working with the client, we bring in the power of one. We have 30 plus years of digital pioneering and customer innovation experiences, and you could see some of our accolades and the work that we've done with our clients over many years. It is our culture that defines who we are as an organization and add to the client's journey, and we are very protective about our culture. The next slide. In our journey towards diversity, starting with inclusive leadership, which drives an authentic culture of inclusion, which also ensures that our leaders are learning, growing, adapting, and we are allowed to experiment to bring our best, and hence allow everyone to bring their best and thrive at the workplace. Also, inclusive mindset, where there are different programs and initiatives about understanding and supporting underrepresented groups. And the biggest chunk of this effort is really about business resource groups, which are affinity groups coming from our own people that drive this mindset as well. And all of this is measured through the diversity matrices. Next slide. So when we started on the journey for people with disabilities inclusion, there are certain mindsets that became the biggest challenge. We realized that disability inclusion starts with disability confidence. Only when people feel that they are feeling confident is when they will actually contribute their best effort towards disability inclusion. Next. And here, the next slide, please, Mitch. Right? And hence we started defining what is it that we are up against. We are up against a mind block. Lot of people have a very charity or sympathy mindset for people with disabilities. We want to be inclusive, but I'm not sure how this will work. We feel that it will slow down if at all, and may not fit into our performance values, etc. And I'm sure you've heard it from a lot more organizations. But we've realized that a lot of people are saying that I want to, but I don't know how to work with a person with disability. And that is the strongest perception that people had. These are inputs that we gathered from many research. The next slide. Our own approach was really to work with people with disabilities to tell us how they feel this is a process that we could move forward. And that's the story that I'm here to relate. What is our inclusion journey? So we asked the community what is it that they felt was the best way forward. And the first ask was to have a higher representation. The leadership sponsored accessibility in everything we do, and development and growth for people that we already have in the organization. So this is where we started, and a lot of organizations will be grappling with the fact, do I need to, can I really operate from this building or not? Do I really need to change everything we have? maybe I don't have the right policies in place, maybe our people are not trained, but are we ready for it, right? Next, going from there, we really we really thought that creating resources for everyone which are easily accessible, easily assimilated, is the best way forward. So we have videos that we also created more for internal folks to start feeling more confident, feeling more at ease, feeling that I know what are the right things to say and what is not to be said, what's the right behavior, what is not. And we have a series in partnership with our consulting partner called Sashwati. You must connect with her in case you feel this is a journey that you meet with her. We also have another partner, Gift Tabled, and both of them have been really very, very helpful in this journey. So our series, it's a 14-minute full video. If you have to watch it, it talks about what are the right things to say, terminology, what to keep in mind, how to work with a person with disability and different kinds of disability. And it also talks about the Indian Sign Language. So this is the first video, how to work with people with disability, sign language and beyond. And Mitch, if please be kind enough to paste the link for this video for all our audiences. The second one was also about, I am not sure how it is going to feel with the group, how the group will work. How do people with blindness or people with deafness or people with certain physical ailment actually work and get work done? Can I really put pressure when there is one and everybody is stretching or not? So what we did is, we have three of our champions, Dinesh Kaushal, Bani Walia, and Nitin Baranwal. Three of them have different kinds of disability. And we created a short film, another 14 minutes quick film that everyone can watch with their families, where we showcase our professionals with disability, a day, an entire day of how they work around, how they, get to work, how they are at home, and how they go about doing their day-to-day things, and where they are looking, like absolutely regular folks, right? And that is the second film that we were able to bring out. It's called Disability is the Inability to See People as More. Mitch, are we happy to play a short promo of the video?
Disability is just a mind frame.
Switch to command browser.
I learned a lot of things with time to be independent.
I had no other thought actually. I just thought I will become a software programmer.
I have a very high impact role and a very high exposure role. I think the kind of opportunities I've got here, I don't think so I would have got in any other organization.
Thank you, Mitch. This is really the story of three of my very dear colleagues. It really talks about an everyday life. Like I said, it will, it can be shared with your colleagues, with your friends, and really bring forward an image of how professionals with disabilities really go about their life. Quickly, I'll go on to my last slide. With this thought where we started, and with people from the community guiding us, and the leadership really sponsoring our work, and with us, whole group of vigilantes and allies, this has really been our journey, where we started with organizational support and infrastructure, our policies being equal opportunity policy that includes provision for regional accommodation. And this is a list that we don't decide, but people come up with, and then there are approvals for it. Accessible infrastructure and facilities, which is a prominent part of our real estate requirements. So we not only have, just for the, washroom, this thing, it is not just for physically, people with disabilities, but also gender neutral. We have a large bouquet of insurance benefits, for people, driving accessibility also for vendors. So when we've actually delayed taking in services from vendors because their platforms are not accessible, and then we have gone a step ahead to help make their platforms accessible, which ensures that their other clients are able to offer accessibility to everyone else. Disability sensitization programs, many of them, and then, for every decision maker, every person who's involved in the organization. We also have inclusion programs. We started with campus recruitment. We have focused hiring program, and other internal and external program. But really, if you ask me, the detail is in the integration. We have a 6 month very strong integration. We also ensure that the community of people with disability actually grows and thrives within the organization. They have power, they have a voice, and they are actually getting space to talk to us top leaders on what is it that the organization should be doing, what's the feedback for the organization, and that has really worked well. We have also ensured that they're included in bigger chapters, bigger conversations at a DEI, at a strategy level. We also have the BRGs, which are the representation for this community. Numerous high visibility program. If I can count, this would be one of them, where we are talking and showcasing work internally and externally. It helps us attract talent. We also have communication accessibility workshops, which really is every day as you work, is your email, is your everyday presentation, communication, anything that you're putting on LinkedIn, Facebook, WhatsApp, is that accessible or not? And it takes about max 5 minutes of your time to really look through it. We also have championing, and in systems and resources. Obviously, not every system was designed yesterday, and hence we have work to make them accessible. Sometimes it takes time, but all of the policy benefits and systems continuously gets updated and upgraded because of this group. I will stop here and hand it back to you, Smita, but absolutely happy to be a part of this program and happy to answer questions if you may have.
Thank you, Vishaka. This is truly inspiring. And, one can clearly see there's so much of focused effort that has gone into making this journey really happen. So while you were talking, I was trying to link it to some of the conversations we've had with our clients. While a lot of them want to really embark on this journey, one question that still runs on their mind is, where do we start? Is there a sequential process? Do we start with, audit? Or do we check readiness? Do we sensitize? Is there a sequence to this? Or do we do this all together, which in turn will overwhelm the system? So where do we start with till we know we're really ready for this journey?
My answer to that is, it is overwhelming to think where to start. So I think we should just start wherever we can. I don't think we will be able to get to a space where we get all our systems, all our infrastructure, and sensitize people, and then say, okay, now we are ready. So we actually did all of it together. Like, different pieces were picked up. We had our real estate audits, and we said, okay, whatever we can do now, let's start with that, right? When we looked at our hiring programs, we did not demarcate roles. We did not say, okay, like this seems like a kind of disability that will fit into this role. We said these are the roles that are open, and anybody who feels they qualify for it, let them come up. And we sensitized actually our hiring partners, our interviewers, recruiters. Because if somebody is clearing a degree, a graduation, a post graduation, an engineering degree, then they are already qualified. Then we should not be the people to judge if they can do a role or not. So I think you should start anywhere where you want. If you have time for training, let's start there. If you have this resources to get your infrastructure, etc., let's start there, and then continue pushing as and when you can into everything. But ensure that the visibility of the breadth that is required is on your radar, so that it's not forgotten. So you start anywhere you want, which is possible today, and then you keep gearing up. That would be my response.
So there is no particular D-Day. It's an ongoing process that you'll have to
Absolutely.
build up, right?
Absolutely.
All right. And I hope Mitch allows me to squeeze in one more question before I hand it over to another speaker. This is again an interaction that I had with a client, and she was telling me that despite all the enabling infrastructure, sensitization, policies provided, the employees from the community are hesitant, or there is wariness to take on role which are of supervisory nature or creates visibility for them. They prefer roles that are more backend, roles that do not put them in a lot of in a visible role rather. But the organization is ready to give that push, but there is reluctance. Have you experienced this at Publicis? If not from your own experience of doing this for so many years, how do you think organizations can navigate through this?
I have not experienced this at Publicis Sapient, but I will give some food for thought because I do know where it's coming from, right? If we think of introverts, right, I think we will have this challenge with introverts. They don't want to be so visible, interacting with so many people, also in places where there is more confrontation at times, right? It will happen with women, climbing at different career levels. They do not want to be, they're wary of taking on a lot more. They're also looking at how people look in those roles, maybe certain very senior executive ranks, and saying, is this the life I want? Because my work life balance may go for a toss. You will have it for an LGBTQ person and more. So anybody who feels vulnerable being at a greater height, which makes them more visible, makes them get into spaces which have discomfort. This is something. And I don't think this does not apply to anyone in professional life. I think all of us have gone through it where we've had, even if it's a moment of this thing. What comes in handy is the support. So a lot of times people would have handheld us. I know those people in my life, right, who would have said, Vishaka, I think you can do it, try. Or we are here, what's the challenge, we'll support you. Or I know in my heart that I have well wishers, and if I take it up because I feel I want to and I don't know how to, there will be help that I'll get. So sponsorship is key. We actually, so for every person with disability, frankly, for every vulnerable group campaign and a hiring that we've done, we've had a mentor who's also the sponsor for the person, right? We ensure they also have leadership support, so the leaders actually know quite a few people who work in this from the community. So once people start feeling comfortable and supported, and of course organizations should have development programs, leadership development programs and more. I think that's the way to bring in any diversity of kind, and hence it also applies for people with disabilities.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vishaka, for those. Now, with that, we move on to our next speaker, Venki from ANZ.
Thank you so much, Smita and Vishaka. You take a bow. I think it was very impressive what you told us today. I represent ANZ, and for those of you who are not aware, ANZ is among the world's leading banks. We are the number one or number two bank in Australia and New Zealand, depending on what metrics you take. And as a bank, over the last few years, we have been going through a very large cultural transformation. And the one of the pillars of that transformation has been our work around creating a purpose for us. So a few years ago, among one of the earliest banks in the world to create a purpose, we created what a few words that will drive all of our actions. So the purpose for ANZ is to shape a world where people and communities thrive. And that itself set the agenda for anything that we do, whether it is what we do with the diversity and inclusion space and so on and so forth. So Mitch, if you could move on to the first slide. ANZ's journey, actually, we started looking at inclusion and diversity as a big issue several years ago. But more importantly, as a bank, we have the entire society, which is our customer. So we have a large set of customers representing all the groups that that are there in the world. So we found the different backgrounds, perspectives, life experiences of people help forge very strong connections with our people. So if we can replicate our customer base to reflect the societal sort of breakdowns, we assume that we will get a very, very strong outcome for our business as well. And so we are always been looking at creating a culture of equality by enabling change in the way we work, the way we think, etc. ANZ has always been committed to ensuring that our workplace welcomes and supports variations and individual contributions of people, and make sure that whatever products we design, whatever we sell in the market, actually is inclusive and accessible to everyone. I think disability, as all of us know, is a part of human diversity, and we will do well as a corporate entity to actually embrace it and make sure that our products and services meets everyone's requirement. ANZ worldwide is about 60, 70,000 people. Obviously, in India, we run a bank as well as we run this offshore delivery center for our ops and tech world. This is about 8,000 people in Bangalore. And we started our journey in this inclusion space for India in 2010. It was a small pilot. We hired 6 people with hearing disability. And, Smita, going back to your question on where to start, we just decided that we will start with the 6 people with hearing and a little bit with orthopedic disability. This initiative was ramped up in 2014. And today, ANZ has got in its workforce in Bangalore about 100 differentially able people, which actually means just short of 2% of our numbers. It's a small first step, but I think we are well on target to actually grow this as we go along. It took a little time for the new hires to come in and learn and go through the learning curve. But now what it has done is the success of this pilot has actually established a very, very strong business case for us to hire more and more from all parts of the society. If you move on to the next slide, Mitch. We have not looked back thereafter, and while the industry research shows that inclusive workplaces are several times more likely to be effective in terms of productivity, it's a lot higher. Innovation is several times more than non-inclusive workspaces. We have actually lived and breathed through this journey, and we have, if you see our profile around the kind of people we have hired, there are about 30 odd percent with hearing impairment. There are 40 plus percentage with orthopedic and movement sort of challenges. There are a few who are visually challenged as well. And we have even moved on, and based on our success with the early pilot, actually hired a few with some severe neurological deficits as well. And all of them have told us a few things, and we have learned a lot during this journey. And I will share some of our experiences here. And while we are hiring persons with disability, we have also made sure that within that there is a large population of women employees as well. So out of those 100 odd people that we have, there are 25% of them are women. And I think that's the other aspect, the second derivative within this inclusion journey. Most of in the initial stages, our early hires, almost more than half are at entry level. But more importantly, hiring is always easy, but how do you give them a career is the bigger question. I'm happy to report that almost 60% of our people who have been with ANZ for 1 to 3 years from the PWD category have actually got promoted and moved on to larger and bigger roles. I think that's where rubber hits the road. That's the test for any initial pilot and intervention that we do in this area. If you move on to the next slide, Mitch. And what has helped us do this is right from our executive committee in Australia to the CEO, there is a huge amount of dedicated support from the management. There is adequate funding put in for this. And more importantly, a very, very passionate team of volunteers and experts who have actually given this whole program a huge amount of push and momentum. While we do this, there is also a very strong governance and policy to enable the progress. At a group level, there is an accessibility and inclusion plan that we deliver. And this is sponsored and monitored by a member of our management board. In the service center in Bangalore, we created a dedicated focus on diversity and inclusion through what we call as Bangalore Dni Council. The DNI Council is chaired by myself as the MD of the organization, and we have got all the leaders taking on sponsorship roles within this Diversity and Inclusion Council. Similarly, as Vishaka mentioned in her sort of talk, our policies and frameworks that govern and the governance mechanisms are all geared towards supporting equal opportunity. We have got a very well documented equal opportunity bullying and harassment policy that pretty much drives everything that we do with our people. The other piece is we have also worked extensively with partners and experts in this area. So listening to the community and the disability sector is a very essential aspect of making this work. We have very strong partnerships with NGOs through our corporate sustainability and diversity agenda. Every employee in ANZ gets a 1 day volunteering leave, which is provided just so that the employee can actually participate in community events. Similarly, there are our CSR program is geared towards grants to communities which support disability led organizations. Our money minded program, we are a bank after all, so financial literacy is a very large piece. The money minded financial literacy program is available with people with disability too. So whatever we do for our larger customers, for our larger staff, is also made sure that it is available for our PWD staff as well. The other piece is working with large advocacy groups, NGOs, Niswartha, Visesh, etc., gives us the latest and greatest that's happening here, which allows us to develop standards and policies to support this group of employees. Similarly, when we started working with this, as an example, we started working with Niswartha, which actually provides educational facility for people from the weaker section of society. We actually went in and told them we would like to participate, subject to them adding PWD students and supporting and bringing them up in through this scheme as well. And that has been a very, very big win for us, because mostly PWD students are not only suffering from are going through what they have from a disability point of view, they usually are also financially a lot weaker. So this has helped us drive up agenda. We are very active participants in several industry activities around this. So, for example, just to promote every disabled person to participate in political, social, and economic and cultural life, we have participated big time in things like Mission 1000, Valuable 500, and we are key sponsors of India Inclusion Summit. So these coupled with the fact that our recruitment teams are extremely sensitized to make sure that inclusive hiring is part and parcel of our recruitment agenda, has really worked for us. One of the things that worked, as I said, hiring is easy, but how do you make sure once you get a person with disability into the organization, for that person to move up in the organization? I think there is a very strong requirement for additional training and mentoring. And we have done that, and one of our flagship programs is called Uptick, and I'll talk briefly about it a little later. It is essentially geared towards enabling people to take on larger and bigger roles, and actually addressing, Smita, the point that you made, that there is usually reluctance to take on larger roles, more demanding roles. We want to create that confidence in them to be able to do that. One of the things that has worked is, I spoke about our dedicated and passionate team of volunteers. We actually have an annual star award where we, at a group level, at ANZ international level, we recognize people who have played a very big part in our PWD agenda. And that has also been a very, very important aspect to make sure that our pilot grew from 2010 to where it is today. If you move on, Mitch. Similarly, one of the areas that is really important when you look at this as a step for your organization is creating the right ecosystem. I've always been saying hiring is just not enough. We have to ensure that the message of inclusion permeates right through all the management structure, the business process, etc. So one of the roles that we did with an NGO here is to map some roles that can be easily done in a bank by by people with disability. The next critical step is obviously infrastructure. It's important to go beyond what we call in ANZ as a ramp mentality. It's just not enough to have a ramp, but invest in small solutions. Even small solutions can yield big productivity benefits. In the initial years, for example, anecdotally, in the initial years, it took us a little bit of effort to convince the team and the management here to look at buying motorized wheelchairs. But once they got that, the multiplier effect on the performance of people with limited mobility was just fantastic. So now we have bigger cabs that can accommodate wheelchairs, and we have even hired people to help disabled employees get in and out of cars and during their day-to-day dependent sort of where they are dependent on some help, for example during food and lunch breaks, etc. We have all our town halls, all our large group huddles have a sign language interpreter, and we have gone ahead and created a dictionary of banking words in sign language. So so that even complex banking terminology like a syndicated loan is available as a sign language, for people with speech and hearing impairment. The physical building infrastructure is quite easy, we find. The more difficult part is getting acceptance from the team, so for which sensitization programs for managers and teams, particularly those who are starting out new in this, is really key, and we run that extremely regularly. And I'm very proud that when we ran the first pilot, we ended up with the entire team, and this was in our trade finance area, actually becoming sign language specialists, because they wanted to make the new hires feel very accepted in the team. So I think that tells you the level of importance that a volunteering activity like that is brings to the table. While we hire PWDs, obviously there is no compromise made on the performance standards and work targets. This ensures that all the hires feel very valued and work as an equal partner. ANZ depends on Enable India, Visesh, etc. to help us work through this. If you move on to the next bit, actually the previous slide, the challenges piece. One of the things that we found is if you do not make hiring PWD as a part of your talent strategy, it does not work. So right from the time you identify roles, you go in for hiring, you foster inclusive hiring practices. I think that's a really important learning. The second piece we found was, I briefly spoke about our uptick program. This was a flagship intervention that really helped us turn around a very difficult situation. We ended up hiring a lot of entry-level people, but we just were not able to create the right level of A, skill, and B, ambition in them to actually move up to the next levels. And that's where we started working on a continuous learning program to help them actually build skills that are very essential as we move up the leadership ladder. So the uptick program covers things like communication skills, stakeholder management, and so on and so forth. And that's really worked well, and the results are very, very clear and very extremely positive. Similarly, the perception among most companies who want to embark on this journey is it takes a lot of effort, it requires huge amount of workflow modifications, and so on and so forth. What our experience has been is, actually, if you start somewhere, the rest of the thing gathers momentum and moves along. And as you bring the full organization and the teams behind it, that really helps us work well. One of the things that is very hard in this piece is it takes a huge amount of effort. So one needs to be very patient with the strategy like this. We figured out that it takes time to build the right environment, right culture, get the policies and the training infrastructure support in place. And once we get the mindset shift into our employees, that's when the entire exercise really starts accelerating. The other challenge we have always had is a lack of highly skilled talent. Talent pools are very good for basic entry level data entry skills. But as you move into deeper areas of banking, we are finding talent availability scarce. That's where our work with Enable India and Visesh has helped us in hiring the right people, but giving them the right subject matter expertise. We have also learned that sensitization of staff is important, but more important is the enabling infrastructure and the people that support it. So, for example, drivers, the housekeeping staff, they need to be sensitized as well. So, I think that was a big learning, and we have now put that in really well into our sort of day-to-day training programs for these people. Similarly, using experts, Enable India, Visesh, Samarthanam have been really very useful for us, because, as I said, they tell us what's happening in the world, what we should do and aim for next. I think continuous focusing on making sure we are sharing best practices, helping others move through the journey is also very good, because by that you are increasing the size of the pie. So I think there is a fair amount of learning we have had in our 12 years. Early days yet, we still believe there is a long way for us to go, and one of the most exciting piece of participating in this was to hear from other similar firms and learn and pick up from them. So continuous learning and continuous updation of our own perceptions and realities around this is also very important. I think I'll stop here, Mitch, and see if there are any other questions that I can answer.
Thanks, Venki. I've been in the banking industry for some time now, and with my experience across different industries, I think that has been one of the busiest workplaces that I've ever worked with stretch hours. People are always on the go, and to see an entire organization invested in this journey is really impressive. And with that, I come to my question, or rather, a question from the participant. How did you build the hiring pipeline for persons with disabilities?
Yeah. So initially, it's hard, because you really don't even know where to start. That's where the partners sort of came in very useful. In the 2010 pilot, once we decided that we wanted to work with it, our first few sort of superset of potential recruits came from Enable India, actually. So we started with them, and then once you have that, I think the community themselves realize, and word of mouth spreads quickly. So it's been relatively simpler thereafter, but still, as I said, most availability of talent is plentiful at the entry level, at the data sort of capture kind of stage. Anything beyond that, it's really hard. I mean, if we believe attracting talent is hard, let me tell you, if you're looking for very senior bankers in this group, it's really tough. So I think that's where hiring them and putting them through the right level of training, giving them adequate amount of time to learn the business of banking has been the way forward.
Thanks. Another question, follow-up question is, what kind of measurement metrics have you adopted to ensure that there is adherence to the process?
Yeah. So look, right, as I said, every year, what you don't measure will not work, right? So every year when we put our plans together, we take a target in terms of adding to our, employee strength from the PWD group. And once we have the target, then there are people running behind it. So there is a number right at the top that we chase. The second piece is, as I said, hiring alone is not important. The second piece that we need to monitor is how many of our people are moving on to the next level and the levels thereafter. So each time there is a promotion opportunity, we want to see how many people have applied and how many make it. That's when we did this, that metrics told us that there is a problem. One is either people are not applying, or those who apply do not have the necessary breadth of skills to make it to the next level. And that's how uptick as a program came along. So once you have these 2-3 metrics here, then our biggest one is our customer engagement and staff engagement metric, because there is a great question on this as far as our cultural transformation goes. And we hear the feedback from not only the PWD staff, but the entire organization. So that is another very important metric for us, which we monitor.
And another thing that I specifically found of interest in your PPT was about your mentoring. I've heard a lot about the hiring pipeline and sensitization workshop and accessibility, but mentoring. How did you go about it? If you can just share with us a few
Yeah.
insights from that.
So, when we found the skill gap, between the what we need for a senior employee versus what an employee possesses, we realized that a lot of them were not on the aspects of banking that they do already, but it's more on things like how do you manage a demanding stakeholder, how do you communicate well, how do you present well. Now these, there are classroom courses for these, but more important than that is the someone to recognize that this is indeed the gap and this is where the problem is. So what we decided was, as part of Optic, we allocated senior mentors to each of our PWD staff who participated in this. And remember, getting them to even participate in this was a hard one.
Yeah,
There
I
is
understand
reluctance to do
completely.
that. So there was a little bit of nudging, there was a little bit of pushing, but we still couldn't get everyone in. But whoever came in was allocated a senior mentor. That mentor worked with them for a period of 3 months, out of which the first week was only in identifying what the gaps are. And then we got a long list of gaps, which could be in saying that this person, the problem is largely introvert versus an extrovert kind of a problem, or is it a knowledge of aspects of banking, or is it that there are some com skills that are missing. Once we identified that, the mentor was working with, so we then ran classroom programs, but with the mentor sort of supporting them right through. So because any of these, for example, if you do a presentation skills workshop, it requires constant practice, and that's where the mentor came in. And they met several times in the next 2 months to work through any opportunity they got. They will be put in the front, mentor takes notes, goes back, gives them feedback and things like that. Normally presentation workshops, we know, is one recording and then a feedback and that's it. Here it was not like that. There was multiple areas of practice. So depending on what the mentor and the mentee identified as a gap, the mentorship program was very, very customized, not the normal speed dating, speed mentoring kind of bit that we didn't work on that. It was a very customized program because this group essentially required that.
Thanks, Venki. Thanks for sharing this story. I'm sure this is really useful for a lot of us here. With that, we move on to our
Thank you.
third and final speaker, Shreya.
Hello,
So Shreya, I know, has been facing a bit of a technical glitch. Meanwhile, please post your comments, feedback, questions for us, and we will respond to it once Shreya is back online.
Yeah, hello everyone, and thank you so much for getting me on board on this discussion. And I'm very, very happy to share what Capgemini is doing in terms of embracing abilities. So, Mitch, can we move on to the next slide? Yeah. So if you see our mission, Capgemini's purpose is unleashing human energy through technology for an inclusive and sustainable future. So why such a purpose? Capgemini has gone from 7 people in 1967 to 380,000 employees in more than 50 countries. And in India alone, we have about 180,000 employees working out of 13 cities. So naturally, this is our purpose because we are a people company working for people. And this purpose helps us build a culture in which all individuals are treated fairly and respectfully and given equal access to opportunity and resources across the group. It's what drives us to find new ways to become more diverse so that we can use the differences between us to make us greater together. It empowers us to transform society for the better and get the future that we want. which is actually our mission. So Capgemini has been strengthening its commitment to becoming a more inclusive brand and creating a more inclusive world through several dimensions. One of which, let me share. Firstly, we gained a lot of in-depth understanding of our own diversity through our people when we did a global inclusion survey, and that helped us monitor progress in this key topic. What we launched was internal campaign on disability inclusion to promote awareness and reinforce our culture of active inclusion. One of the outcomes of this survey, we also focused on our efforts on enriching our learning and development assets with active inclusion modules, for instance, leadership trainings on unconscious biases. And finally, we committed to a process of continuous improvement to ensure people with disabilities have equal access to tools and systems they need. And this is the reason why we launched a dedicated accessibility program to ensure our digital platforms are accessible and inclusive. And the strong focus continues with our active disability inclusion committees driving this objective, right? So, if you see, and I think some of the speakers have already shared, such commitment has to be driven top down. And we have actually also partnered with the Valuable 500 to make it a public commitment to ensure that we are driving success in disability inclusion. Now, Mitch, if you can move on to the next slide. If you see what we have put together when it comes to embracing abilities framework, is first we've worked on our policies, ensuring each and every policy is providing equal opportunity and is an inclusive policy. So whether it is our comp and bend policy or it is our equal opportunity policy, each of them have been made inclusive. I will speak a lot more about Digital Academy, but I would like to speak a little bit here. Now, Digital Academy was created to actually upskill people who do not have access to tech trainings or tech skills. And this has been one of our assets in bringing in a lot of people with disabilities, because they go through this training. And like, my panelists shared, most of the people in India who are people with disabilities come from a socio-economic background where they do not have access to a lot of upskilling, and therefore Digital Academy is helping us exactly there by addressing the skill gap and driving employability. Now, in terms of governance, we have, one of the business heads as a sponsor, and for each of our businesses, and we have almost 13 businesses, each of our businesses, we have a senior business partner who is a part of our committee with senior HR representatives that support each business to be part of this governance, so that we are actually driving actual results. Just to give you some ideas on numbers, we have over 1,500 people with disabilities currently on our roles, working out of very different cities in India alone. Mitch, if you can move to the next slide. All right. So here, what have been our efforts in creating inclusion? So firstly, accessibility, and let me actually probably talk about accessibility a little bit in detail. When we talk about accessibility, the first thing that comes to mind is the infrastructural accessibility. Of course, that is very important because for people who do not have, let's say, orthopedic disabilities, it's impossible to understand how inaccessible your environment could be. So definitely creating the accessibility, infrastructural accessibility in all our buildings out of which we work. And also along with that, we ensure that there is parking space, especially mentioned for people with disabilities, so that they can enter the workspace easily. Apart from that, we provide tech support, other accessible requirements, reasonable accommodations for employees who require to do their jobs on a daily basis. But I also believe that we need to continuously do the messaging on awareness and the company's commitment towards inclusion, because sometimes many of our employees, after being employed, face disabilities, and at that time asking for reasonable accommodation from their managers, and making sure that that doesn't impact their careers, is an important very important aspect of actually creating the inclusive, making accessibility inclusive, right? And that is the reason why we are constantly telling people about many other, making them aware of disabilities, making managers aware and open to their employees, reaching out to them and asking for reasonable accommodations whenever it is required throughout their employee lifetime. Now, looking at inclusion, um, on our page, if you see, when we are talking about inclusion, that also comes under accessibility. Uh, we have, the government of India has recognized 21 disabilities, and for each disability, we have different needs. So we work very closely with the business teams, and that's where our journey basically starts. Even it starts even before onboarding people, people with disabilities as employees. It starts there. What we do is we start with a lot of manager and peer sensitizing before the employee joins the teams. This is required because there are many types of disabilities, and managers are not aware of all different types of disabilities, what is required for them to make employees successful. So one of the things that we have noticed is that empowering our managers is definitely a critical piece to creating this inclusive workplace. Also, what we must remember is that um, when we work with different disabilities, even though we have a lot of employees working with us, it still is something that we are learning every day, the different nuances of different disabilities. And therefore, what we do is we continue to work with our NGO partners so that they can be the source of our knowledge, of telling us how we can work with employees, how can we create inclusion, how can we create a sense of confidence in our employees when they join us, and the sense of support that they have through their peers and through their mentors in the workplace. And then, of course, we have a lot of sessions going on through the year. We celebrate International Day of Persons with Disability. We also create a lot of engagement around these programs, and I'll show you some pictures later on the slide. When it comes to recruitment, even though we have large numbers, I would say we are still not at the level where we are recruiting people without disabilities. I think there is a lot of work to be done. And yes, Venki mentioned it's a slow process. We have to be patient, we have to keep learning. And I think that's where we are today. How we do our recruitment today is that we directly work with businesses, we create opportunities, we target roles, and then we start working either with our digital academy, who is currently training people with disabilities, or we reach out to our NGO partners, our partners who are in the skill development for people with disabilities, to actually start the recruitment process and the interview process. uh, what we've also seen, sometimes for our when we are trying to hire people from the neurodivergent disabilities, we have seen the requirement of reaching out to even parents and working with parents for some of these employees who are joining employment. Their parents also need to be pushed to, or rather we need to get them, bring them to the confidence level that they can actually leave their children to come and work with us, and perform the regular duties. Again, another thing that we have done is on our job portal, we have so all our jobs are open for people with disabilities, and we actually encourage everyone to, all diversities, to come and apply. But we have specifically made entry for people who are putting their resumes to let us know if they have any accessibility requirement, especially during interview, so that their interview experience is the best and that we are able to progress to the next steps. Also, we have another very, I think, a very exciting tool to share. This has been built by our employees. It is still in sort of trial, but it is an in-house tool to interview people on the autism spectrum, which we will very soon bring in our recruitment processes. So yeah, I mean, that's a lot about what we are doing in this space. Mitch, if you can move on to the next slide. Here are some of the celebrations and some of our activities where we are talking about many different things, whether it is, autism, whether it is about speech and hearing impairment, whether it is about visual impairment. And we do this through mediums like storytelling or theater. And we are actually working on all the myths associated with these and the stereotypes that are associated with these, to sort of clear the minds of people and to be able to work with people with disabilities a lot easier. In the I think To conclude, I would like to talk about maybe our flagship program or intervention, what you may call. It is our digital literacy program. It is run by our very, very effective CSR team. But I think why it has come into place is because we've realized that there are certain sections of our communities that are not getting the opportunity to even get trained in the skills that we are hiring for. So we have put these centers across India where people with disabilities are getting technical training on skills like Java and other skills, and we are bringing them into uh, Capgemini through different businesses. And currently, just to give you an idea, total candidates who have completed the training is 186, and total placed through this particular intervention is 40. And and we are onboarding many more in the future. So that's something that I would like to conclude with. And yes, I have some testimonials for you to read, and these come directly from our employees who have disabilities and who are now currently working with us. So thanks again for letting me share these interventions.
Thank you so much, Shreya. This was really detailed and I really impressive to see the amount of focus, approach, and effort that you've put in to make this journey really successful and a sustainable journey at that. One thing that really caught my attention while you were speaking is the recruitment process. How you've sensitized the team, the tools and techniques that you've used. If you can speak a little bit more about how did you equip your hiring team or the hiring managers to be sensitive and also ensure the process is bias free.
Yeah, so I think what we are I mean, we are trying to do each time we are recruiting is, we are focusing and we are always at this point, like I said, we are not there yet in terms of recruitment. So we work sort of on a project base. Okay. So we get in touch with the business leaders and their HR and we shortlist certain roles. Then we target who we will hire. Sometimes and we try to hire people with similar disabilities. So for example, when we hire people with um, you know um, autism, let's say from autism spectrum, we actually work with an NGO, right? So the sourcing is being done by an NGO. Sometimes the skilling is being done by an NGO, and you've heard that from our other speakers as well. So we actually get them to come over and talk about this particular disability because obviously it is not possible for us to know all the details of all types of disabilities. And I will share a past experience as well with you, Smita, where we realized that this was very important. Is in my experience, we actually spoke to managers and then hired people from the new neurodiversity or autism spectrum, you can say, and they started to work and we did everything, we did the sensitization, and we did include them. The team was open, we did peer sensitization. The person was being included for even informal gatherings like lunches or tea coffee breaks. But what used to happen is whenever the manager used to ask this employee to do just overtime, so every time they would ask the employee to do overtime, the employee would get extremely anxious and not be able to control their emotions. And the manager reached out to me and said, that everything is fine, but when something like this happens, we don't know what to do, right? And that's where we spoke about how we need to empower managers. So then we actually went back to the manager, we brought our NGO partner, we told them that people who have this on the autism spectrum have are very good at repetitive work. They need hand holding for a longer duration, so let's say 6 months, but once they start this repetitive work, they don't need any support from anyone and they are actually very productive. It's just that when you try to change that pattern, because they are very pattern oriented, that they then start sort of showing that anxiety which is not there otherwise. And this is how we actually realized that how important it is for the manager to know the disability that they have hired, the challenges that they are facing, and the very different ways of creating inclusion for these different disabilities. So,
Thank you, Shreya. And Mitch, would be great if we can get our other panelist on screen as well. Hi, Vishaka. Have you joined this? Yeah, I can see you now. So thank you. This has been a really insightful session, very useful for me at least. And I really hope that we're able to motivate organizations still considering embarking on this journey and, to start on this sooner, if not later. And just one question before we leave. And, this is our popular question that has come across many times. And while all of you shared your case studies, and there are best practices from there that organizations can learn from, if you could say if there is one or two mantra for success in this journey, is there any? I know there is no one or two things there. It's an accumulation of a lot of things together. But considering this is a
I,
popular question that has come by,
I would, yeah, I would go by that one mantra that I actually follow. Listening to an underrepresented group actually expedites the learning journey of an organization. So I would say keep people from the community very, very close if that's the inclusion journey you want to make. They are the best people to get advice and reverse mentor the organization, if I can say that, right? uh, in return, the organization should absolutely sponsor people from the community so that you are able to grow role models within and hence attract talent from outside.
thanks,
For me,
Vishaka. How
actually,
about you?
sorry. For me, actually, that patience is the key here. One is you need to give yourself, your organization, a whole lot of time, because it's a major sort of change to how we have been dealing all these years. And the second piece is, you need to develop a bunch of passionate volunteers from within. I think if you don't have that, it's going to be very hard. So if you once you develop that, then that rolling momentum comes through, and things work. So be patient and leverage passionate volunteers, is what I would say.
Yeah, for me, the mantra is knowledge, because a lot of what you see, the behavior of employees or recruit hiring managers, a lot of what you see is basically coming out of not having enough knowledge or information about people. There is a lot of myth. There is a lot of you maybe sometimes this uncomfortable feeling that people have. Okay, they have certain disabilities, so maybe I am getting conscious about it. How do we talk about it? So I think spreading the knowledge that we need to look at them as people first. Everybody has something, some quirk. Yeah, people with or without disabilities, everybody has some quirk. So I think we need to create more and more awareness. It has to be a continuous messaging. Without that, we can't stop. So yeah, that's my mantra.
Thanks, Shreya, Vishaka, and Venki, for the successful mantra. With this, we come to the close of the session. I hope all of you have a wonderful day and happy Navratri and Pujo. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot. Bye.
Thank you.
I'm wearing